Let's come back to the Republican race, because one of the reasons they don't have a leader right now is because they have a number of issues on which the party isn't quite sure where it is. It used to be the Republicans were the hawkish party, muscular on defense, John McCain, George W. Bush, Dick Cheney. But Rand Paul was talking yesterday on MSNBC, and he said the reason ISIS is so strong is because the hawks in the Republican Party sent so many weapons haphazardly into Iraq, and then ISIS snatched them up. Well, that provoked a pretty strong reaction. Bobby Jindal, the governor of Louisiana, said this is a perfect example of why Senator Paul is unsuited to be commander-in-chief. We have men and women in the military who are in the field trying to fight ISIS right now, and Senator Paul is taking the weakest, most liberal Democrat position. Rick Santorum, the former senator from Pennsylvania, he ran in 2012. He officially announced yesterday, echoed the same theme.
Well, I would expect to hear that from maybe Bernie Sanders. I don't expect to hear that from someone running for the Republican nomination.
If you're Rand Paul, does this mean like you're losing steam, or does this mean in a crowded field you want to be the guy who's different? Everyone else says you're weak, but in an odd way, does it help him?
I think there's a big question about Rand Paul right now. If you look at this comment in isolation, it does look like a very Rand Paul comment. This is where he's been on foreign policy. He tends to be more of an isolationist. He tends to be just separate from the rest of the pack. But if you look at other things he said about foreign policy over the last couple of months, other things he said on other issues, he looks more like he's joining the rest of the crowd. I think that he is still wrestling with this question. Does he need to separate himself from the field, or does he need to appeal to the Republican base?
Right, and as you come into the conversation, let's also bring Chris Christie in, who didn't make the specific point about, he didn't say a liberal Democrat. Chris Christie said, I'm a former prosecutor. Remember, Rand Paul is also leading the fight against the NSA surveillance program, saying the government has way too much power. Chris Christie says, again, Senator, you're wrong.
Misguided means they're wrong.
Yeah.
And there's nobody who's engaging in this national conversation other than me who's used these tools. I've used them for 7 years as a prosecutor, and what they talk about is theoretical. What I talk about is actual.
So again, there are some others who aren't necessarily completely with Rand Paul on this subject who are sympathetic to him, though, including Ted Cruz.
Yeah, look, first of all, on the policy, Rand Paul is right. The hawks do own this. He's wrong in the sense that hawks aren't the only ones who own this. A lot of people bear responsibility for what's happened in ISIS on the left and the right. Politically, I think it's interesting what he's doing. This is part of a bigger play Rand Paul is trying to make to, first of all, take on the establishment wing of the Republican Party. And there's a lot of need for that, and there's a lot of hunger for that on all these issues. And to show some distinction, as you said, from the rest of the field. And in particular, this really appeals to younger voters and younger Republicans at these kind of issues. And I give him credit for nothing else. At least he's having a conversation about something as important as foreign policy, and not just the talking points we're getting out of Hillary Clinton and the talking points we're getting out of the rest of the Republican field. He's trying to shake things up a little bit. I give him credit for that.
And yet, if he wants to expand his base, he's going to a lot of meetings with donors. You're right about young people. You're right about changing the conversation. He's going to a lot of meetings with donors who have supported in the past, people like Mitt Romney, and they're saying, ooh, I'm not sure about this.
Yeah, and he's going to face the same question that people who are on the other side of this issue is, which is, what is your specific plan then? And donors want to hear that. Eventually, voters will want to hear that. And he may say that the hawks in the Republican Party own ISIS, but the next president is probably going to own ISIS and is going to have to figure out what their strategy is.